We started this whole thing out saying, will it do a burnout? And I'm here to tell you, it will in fact do a burnout. Yeah! Hey, thanks for watching Paintucation by Kevin Tetz. Thank you, honestly, sincerely, for watching, for the growth that this channel has received in a short amount of time. I owe it all to you, so thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. And if you keep watching, we'll keep doing fun stuff for you. So we're working on this Camaro, and it started out as a parts car to restore a different car, and now it's turned into pretty much a full restoration. Here's the real hard truth, and you guys know this. A restoration doesn't happen over the course of a couple weeks, and it doesn't happen over the course of a weekend. It's a series of small projects that link together into a procedure of restoring the car. Stuff like filling these holes in. We've done this step by step in front of you. And it's when you think about it, it's just kind of boring. But it's just a bunch of little tiny projects. So that's what we're going to be doing today, some small stuff. But it's the small stuff that matters. Things like rebuilding door hinges and just sub-assemblies and things like that. Making sure that we're ready to put the sexy new sheet metal on or maybe drop the engine in place. All the foundational stuff has to be started. It has to be started first. It has to be built into something that we can actually restore. Otherwise, we're putting lipstick on a pig. And trust me, this thing was a pig, but it was a pig worth saving. Where am I going with this? I don't know. We're going to rebuild the door hinges because I'm ready to put the door back on because now the rocker's in place and everything in that balloon assembly and the hinge pillar on the driver's door is in the right place, and we're ready to put the door back on and, you know, adjust that and make sure that it finally fits. It'll come back off again for paint, for prep and all that stuff, but it's going to go back on again. But the first project we're going to do is to rebuild the door hinges. A while ago, a guy named Kevin Martin reached out to me. He likes the channel and he loves second-gen Camaros, and he's restored his own car and he had a bunch of parts left over. That happens sometimes. So he sent me a few pieces that he knew I would need, including door hinge pins and springs and a ton of different sized bushings. So Kevin Martin, thanks buddy. So what we're going to do first is pull these door hinges off because I need to mount these in a bench vise and drive the pins out, replace the bushings, rebuild it back again. But first we got to get them cleaned up. Can't do that with them on the door. And yeah, so step uno is to pull these hinges off the 100-pound door. All right, so I've already done one set, and I did them, honestly, to learn how to do them before I showed you guys how. So these are completely done. They're completely rebuilt. You can see new bushings in there. I missed a spot sandblasting. You can put that in the comment section, but they're super tight. They're rebuilt, and new roller put on that thing. They're completely sandblasted, media blasted, except that one. and I used my Piclex 20 metal treatment phosphatizer on them so they're not going to rust. So this is passenger side, upper and lower. Passenger side never takes the heat that the driver's side does, but you can still hear that they're a little bit sloppy. So I'm going to go ahead and rebuild them anyways, especially this upper one, because the roller, that's what makes that popping sound. When that roller wears out, and this one is pretty much in alignment, but look there. I mean, it's going to make that popping sound when the door closes. I want to rebuild them. I'm in here. Let's go for it. So some of the parts we got are these. Got some extra springs if I need them, some pins. Here's a roller assembly for a different style hinge. This is a Dorman pin kit that I got from the help section of O'Reilly Auto Parts. And this is some of the stuff that Kevin sent me. Different size bushings. We've got smaller shouldered bushings. Is there a splined one? We have, oh, right here. These guys. So most of the time, the bushing takes the heat. It's a sacrificial softer metal. It's brass, and this is steel. So it's going to wear out, and it also moves on steel better than steel on steel. So if your pins and bushings are completely deteriorated, I've run into this before, sometimes the splined bushings, they're slightly oversized on this barrel, and that's the best thing to put in here. So it depends on the wear, but typically if your bushing is completely gone, it's just hamburgered out, you either have to replace the pin or you can put a splined bushing in and kind of make up for that extra bit of the hinge that's worn out. So here's some other information. Here's some of the tools that I use to get this done. It's not all of the tools I use to get this done, but it's some of the tools I use to get this done. And I customize the socket, and I'll walk you through all of this stuff. But you're going to need some tools, and you're going to need some critical thinking skills in getting this. But one of the most interesting tools is this guy. This is a spring compressor. I'll show you how to use that when we do the top hinge. But I was watching YouTube, because the roller thing, I've never replaced the roller, especially on a second Gen Camaro hinge. And there's a guy at DoubleRRestorations, his name is Russ. Now, I think his daughter's taken over his channel now, but he's on YouTube. He's got a bunch of great how-to stuff for second Gen Camaros, and I love it. He's got an easy delivery style, and he's also a part of NastyZ28.com, and those guys are an incredible resource if you ever want to reach out to a website that has all kinds of really good information. So I wanted to mention DoubleRRestorations and Russ. This is a roller and pin, because I couldn't find the part number for the original one. This is for a third gen Camaro. This is for a like 2000 and up, and it's the roller with a Delrin bushing and the pin with splined ends in. What we're going to do is drive this guy out and drive that one back in. It's a little bit different style roller. I don't care. It'll give me the new roller action and that feel that we're looking for when we open and close the doors on this car. So we're going to start with this guy over here at the bench vise. So when you look at these hinges, here's one way to tell whether they've ever been molested or pins replaced. You see this little notch right there? That's from some sort of a chisel at the factory. You can see that it's chunked a chunk out of the shaft and it's folded it down there. That keeps the pin in place. Obviously, it creates a shoulder on there. What we're going to do is grind that off. We're going to reuse this pin probably because my bushings are still in place and it hasn't been worn out to the point to where it's unforgivable. When I put these together, I'm just going to zap it with my MIG welder, put a little bulge on either side of there, and that'll keep the hinge in place. So step one is to get rid of that little shoulder, and we'll break this hinge down. So this guy should come right out. No, it won't, because I haven't got it ground down all the way there. I left some of the ear. Dang it. There it goes. So before I pull this apart, because I get distracted, I want to make a reference mark. It sucks when you rebuild these hinges and you get a piece backwards. So I always like to either take a photo of it, or for me, what works is I'm just going to do a reference mark. I'm going to put an A here and an A here, and as long as I've got these on the same side, I'm not going to get mixed up. So that's my tip for you. So don't do what I do. So now we can take a look at the bushings. So the inside of this is in pretty good shape. There's a little bit of rust, but hey, that's okay. These bushings are a little sloppy, but that's okay. So now we got to get these guys. This one is pretty good. Like I said, passenger side doesn't really take the heat that the driver's side does. The driver's side was a little more pronounced wear, let's say. There's probably a special tool for this, but I don't have it. It's there. So now what I'm going to do is try and match this up to a similar one over here. And this guy looks like that guy, but it's got a little bit taller barrel. I'm okay with that, so I'm going to get that one, and just in case, I'm going to grab, I don't know, no, I don't want the splined one. All right, let's go look. So what I'm looking for here is for it to almost fit, and that's going to take a lot of effort to make that fit. I don't want that. I don't want to have to wallow the hole out there and oversize it. I want to keep it the same size. So this one, I think, is good. But there's a little bit of rust and there's a little bit of debris right in there. This is a cartridge roll. This is not a burr, a carbide burr. What's it? It's just going to clean out in there. Just clean the rust and schmutz out. All right, so now you see how that stays in there by itself? Yeah. So there's an indicator that we're going to be fine tapping this in. So let's do this. I'm going to tap it in as far as I can here. See, it didn't take hardly any effort there. Sound changes. I've got a flush shoulder there. El Dano. Bam. Good. All right, now we're going to do the second one. Yeah, that guy's going to come right out. Doesn't want to come. That's not a bad thing, but I know that rest is worn. And if it's going to say, I'm going to remove it. No, don't. I'm just going to say out loud, my knee jerk is a really big hammer, start nailing this thing, but I know that's not good. You like what they do? Let's do it at a time. Smarter, not harder. Blah, 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 blah. See, sorry, that's separation there. Maybe get it with Mr. Chisel. Absolutely not. It did not work. It's starting to move a little bit. You can see that. There we go. Yeah, same story. I'm going to clean it up with my cartridge drill because I've hamburgered the inside of it a little bit. This just cleans the rust out. All right, so now I'll match up the bushing. Too big. That size is too big. And this one is the same as the other side. And right there. It fits. There's an interference fit right now. And I can't pull it out without some effort. So I know that's nice and snug. It doesn't take much hammer action to seat the silly sucker. And we are good to go. I'm not going to worry about that surface rust right there. I'm going to use that conversion coating on it, and it's going to phosphatize that stuff. And Bob will be our uncle. So now, I know which orientation to put it back on. And that's the action there. When it opens up, the flat hits the stop. So, I also know that my pin was upward because I'm an idiot and I ground off some of the face, which is going to look stupid when I paint it, and it's going to look super amateurish. So anyway, yeah, so there's that. All right, so I want that snug. And also, I want that smooth, so give me a second here. Some 24 grit. Now we'll dress it down with 80. It looks better. Cool. So we've got a splined end here. So I'm going to take, I don't want to collapse the gap at the hinge, so I'm going to just kind of reposition things. And this is strong here, so I can drive it down a little bit harder. The pin will go down into the gap. And again, I'm just gently tapping. This is not a 10-pound hammer, but we want to use enough force to get the splines seated. Yeah, sound changed, it's seated. There we go. Hinge, super tight, rebuilt. I'll zap that with my MIG, and that'll hold that pin in place. So there is the lower hinge completed. Now let's tackle the big guy. So this spring compressor is really kind of trick. What it does is it grabs a hold of the spring, it does whatever. It does what the spring compressor does. Parts flying off the shelf. There's a sale at Penny's. Parts are flying off the shelf. So this is self-explanatory. It's threaded, and it just relaxes the spring or squeezes the spring until we can take it out. Now I'll just set that down on the floor. I want to make sure the spring goes back in the same way. I don't know why, so I'm going to make a reference mark here with my ink marker. So that's the orientation of my spring. Now this guy can come out, and I'm just going to leave that right there where I know that when I put it back, it goes mark to mark here. All right. So the roller, how do you tell if they're worn? If there's excessive play in the roller, like that, look at that, that's going to pop. There's an immense amount of pressure on this hinge. You saw me, I weighed these doors. They're 100 pounds. So this doesn't seem like much movement right here, but that's enough movement to cause a rattle or a popping sound or something like that. We're going to change this. We're going to replace those. So I'm still going to do the hinges. Hinge rebuild is no different. A steady bench vise sure helps though. And I've got this bench vise tied to my work table with 1/2-inch plate. So now what I'm going to try and do is not do what I did on the last hinge. I'm going to try and buzz that down, get the pin out. Oh, but look here. Yeah, squirrel. Look at this bushing. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's part of the top one. Look at the movement there. You know, of course, obviously that's the top hinge. That's what takes all of the weight. And, yep. All right, cool. So I'm glad I did this instead of just adjusting the hinge. I've done that in the past too, where you just adjust the hinge forward a little bit and it takes up the slack of the, no. All right, let's do grinder. So if I'm looking at this pin, I know somebody out there in YouTube land is going, well, why don't you just replace the pins at the same time? And my answer to that is, I don't want to. Now, my answer to that is, if they're not worn out, I'm not going to replace them. They're the perfect length, they're splined in, there's no wear. There's a little bit of surface rust on that, but there's no real wear. And it's not a gap here. If you see this sunken in around there, you can see the witness mark where it's been rotating for 50 years, but it's not an indentation there. These pins are perfectly fine. So we're going to do one thing. Use my Pickle X. I'm going to work it into those surfaces. What that's going to do is put that conversion coating on the inside of the bushing where paint's never going to see it, and it's going to keep it from flash rusting. So that's about all I can do for prep on that. Now let's set this guy off to the side. And we'll get these bushings out. Well, the one is gone, right? It's already out. I don't have to take it out. It left the chat early. What I need is a drift instead of a pointed chisel, but I don't have one handy right now. There we go. Ow. So now that guy's got a bit heavier of a shoulder. I think it's to compensate for the engineers probably knew that I would be doing this and criticizing them heavily 50 years later and saying, why didn't you put a heavier bushing in there? So they did. And that closely matches that with that shoulder, right? So we're going to do that. And again, we got a slight interference fit. It hangs on. So that tells me that it's super duper close to the right size. Dress the inside with my cartridge roll. Do this side too. So that's interesting. Is that the right size for that? I don't think so. All right, so that's the right size for that. I'm going to get my bushing sized. No. Splined? No. Little guy? I'm on the fence with that. It fits, it doesn't rattle. It's the right ID for the pin. Yeah, we're going to that. Brass is softer. You want to make sure it's centered. And I'm just doing light taps, and you can see that it's walking down in there. So if this was the wrong size, we wouldn't see any motion at all, but it's going down in there. The hammer's literally bouncing off that surface. Sound changes, it's seated. And I'm just going to test fit again because I'm OCD. Yeah, that's going to work. That's going to be super tight. All right, good, good. Now, let's talk about this guy. Here's the other one I took out of the original 74 hinge. It's a splined pin, there's a cap on it and a roller with a bushing, right? So it's pushed in, and we're going to push it out. So we got to get it started. It's going to take an act of Congress and 75 lawyers and 3 engineers and a bunch of hand tools and auto parts store and another manufacturer and an internet website and summitracing.com and YouTube and all of the 35 years of ingenuity and then me growing up around cars and loving Camaros and hating these hinges all at the same time, converging on one procedure to remove that. So what I'm going to do first is get my chisel and just kind of try and wedge that in there and work it out. And that is absolutely not working. No, it is working. Ow. Ow, that hurt. Kevin, stop doing that. See that gap? It's growing. That's what we're looking for. Now, I don't know. On the other one, it took a few more tools. Maybe we can get lucky and just drive this out like this. I think not. Absolutely no. What gives you a good insight? There's the bushing. And I don't know what type of plastic that is from the General, but it's not very strong. But I want it off of there. So now I've got this lip right here that I can access. What I'm going to try and do, because I've only got so 360 degrees of a tiny little 16th inch lip right here. So what I'm going to try and do is press it. I'm going to put this chisel in between, which is tapered, and see if I can push it out from the bottom without getting my chisel stuck. Look at that. You see that? You can see more of the spline right there. So that's the extent of that magic. Look at that.
Just look at it.
Look at that. Pennies from heaven have just fallen on my head without a bruise. Wow. All right, so now, here's next. I don't know which way this goes. Oh, you know what? I do know which way this goes. See the shoulder of the pin? There's a recess there. That's what we're going to do. And this is going to give a little bit of a gap so we still have some ability to roll. So what I'm going to do is just tap this in. I don't want to mushroom that. I don't want to peen that in. So we're going to go over to my press, and we're going to press that in the rest of the way. So my hydraulic press is going to work this in the rest of the way. I saw Russ do this on the internet. It's not going to bend that tab over because it's a forged steel piece. It's going to be great. I am going to put this socket in here just to take up any pressure, just in case. I don't want that to collapse for any reason. So we're going to, there we go. I'm going to sneak that guy in. I'm going to center the pin on the face of the press shaft. And it's going to make short work of it. It doesn't need much more pressure. I could have tapped it in with a hammer, I suppose, or an impact air hammer, something like that. But what I'm trying to do is make sure this will still roll just a little bit. I want it tight, but I don't want it to smash. So let that relax. Okay, I think. Okay, so that's super tight. I can barely turn it with my fingers, and it's driven all the way in there. That's it, man. That's all the effort it takes. So before I put this back together again, this rust is driving me nuts. There's that, it's in here. I've got, this piece is pretty good. I'm going over to the blast cabinet while I've got these blown apart, and I'm just going to get rid of that surface rust. I'm taking this with me. It's the little things, right? So I've got my note there. I'm pretty sure I know that goes there. But I need to do it this way so I know. Orientation. So the pin is going to line up, and this roller is going to hit the detents as it whatever. It's got to do that. And roll there and there. So now, and then I put my spring back in there. It goes between there and there. So I don't remember whether my pin went up or down. So that's a good thing about doing one side at a time. Now I can look at this. I know we have top hinge here. Under the spring is the shoulder of the pin. At the bottom side is the end of the pin. So under the spring is here. So now I can do this safely. Hi. If you're paying attention, you're following this along pretty close, you can probably figure out what's about to happen. If you haven't, if you're not really watching that close, check this out. Look at the screen. What do we have? Exhibit A, hammer, pin, thumb. Hammer, pin, thumb. Hammer, pin, thumb. Does anybody want to take a wager as to whether I smash my thumb? I'll wait. Ow! Holy hell. Super nice. No, not seated enough. Sound changed, seated. So that's how that works. That's how that detent hits. Bam. All right. So good deal, eh? So we're going to do now this, and I've completely eliminated the reference mark with a media blaster that I had put in for which direction my spring goes. So I'm completely shooting in the dark, and I'm just going to assume that it's symmetrical. No, there's a bit of it. Okay, right there. There's a little. And so that's that part. That's not a hammer. But that is. Shut up. I might have to drive that roller down a little bit because I can't take it out, but it's not lining up like I want it to. Anyway, I'll adjust that. In line, just to kind of adjust it a little bit. It'll tolerate a little bit more movement. There we go. All right, so that makes me feel better about that. That won't move. That's better aligned. Cool. All right, so we got both hinges done in record-breaking time, let me say. So we're going to take my Pickle X20, and what I'm going to do is just wet these things down, kind of let it soak in a little bit, make sure that I've got it in all the little cracks, crevices, recesses. The truth is, you don't have to let this stuff sit. The mild acid that's in it kind of takes care of the business end of the stick in a minute or so. But I just want to make sure that I don't have any dry areas wear gloves with this. Picklex 20 or any mild acid, even vinegar, will find a paper cut in record time. It's just not good to expose your hands to it. So, that said, it's not good to expose your hands to hammer blows either, Kevin. So, were these the right gloves to be bashing on the hinges with hammers? No. And I'm going to have a purple mark on my freaking thumb to prove it wasn't. So there's going to it'll stay wet for a little bit. I'm going to get a drying towel because you don't want to leave this dry on the surface. You want to wipe off the excess. And that's plenty of time for the conversion coating to start working and do its thing. What I like about this stuff the most is that unless I sit it outside in the rain, this won't flash rust inside, ever. It is a barrier between atmosphere and substrate. What that means is that the oxygen, oh, look at that, incomplete. See that little speckly look there? That means I didn't spray it properly, so I'm going to go ahead and wet that out again, let it sit. But what I mean by a barrier coating is that the phosphatizer forms a skin, micro skin, over top of the sandblasted metal, and it won't allow the hydrogen and oxygen molecules to embed into that sandblasted surface, which is profiled. That's the term for sandblasting, is it profiles the surface, which on a microscopic level, you'll literally see dents, kind of like this. Look at this, look super close on that. That's rust pits, but profiling by sandblasting or media blasting does kind of the same thing. So that's what's happening on here. So super easy for blasted metal to rust like crazy, because there's little valleys in it. Blasted metal is super clean. It's going to give us a nice factory appearance when we paint these things again. But I've created these micro pits, so I know I'm babbling on, but the Picklex, like I said, does the barrier coating on there, and it stops flash rusting. So now I can test fit these hinges, I can take them off, I can put them back on again, I can mock up my doors, test them, adjust them, see if they fit. I'm super excited to test fit the door again on the driver's side with the new rocker in. And I don't have to worry about these until I blow the car apart again to paint everything. The car is going to get painted, disassembled probably, or I'll jam it out, assemble it, and then just paint the I don't know which strategy I'm going to use yet, but that's going to be there till the end of time. And now I've got completely restored, reassembled, brand new operating hinges with new bushings. I'm super stoked that I didn't have to replace any pins, because frankly I don't have any. That would have been another order on the Webernet. But hey, project done. So however we conclude this, I don't know. I'll probably have a tool party and some cold snacks and get ready for the next thing. But yeah. Questions, comments, put them down below. All right, with these hinges ready to go, completely rebuilt, I'm stoked, because now we can fit them to the door and then fit the door to the cowl and to the hinge pillar. So as far as adjustments go, here's what we have. We've got up and down, left to right, and diagonal, right? In both of these hinge plates. There's a solid metal plate literally hanging on a hook on the back side of here. Same thing here on the hinge pillar. We can go front to back, up to down, and diagonally. So we've got multiple points of adjustment and a lot of different information that we can get this door dialed in perfectly. Now that we know this is in the right place, the hinges are perfect, they're not going to let us down and give us a false read on what actually fits. Now we're going to start and we're going to adjust these perfectly once I figure out which is left and right, because all my witness marks are blown off. But, so, why do we fit the doors perfectly right now when we know we're going to have to blow it all apart again for paint? Here's why. If you've ever listened to me talk about panel replacement, you know that when we do adjustments, we work off of a non-adjustable panel, I call it a fixed point of reference. That's just what I was taught. So the fixed points of reference on this car are the quarter panel, this, and the rocker panel, most importantly. So what we're going to do is get the door fitting to those two fixed points of reference. Spoiler alert, I typically start with the rocker panel, get a nice consistent gap and distance flush to the outer rocker because that's where the door fits best to, and then we'll worry about here. Once we get that locked in, we're going to leave that alone. We're going to super lock it in because then our next job is to replace quarter panels. We're going to take the roof skin completely off. We're replacing the trunk floor, the trunk drop-off plates. I've got outer wheel houses if we never decide to repair the rust. If we want to, I've got a tail panel. We're going to change the whole back end of this car. So guess what? My fixed point of reference is getting ready to go away. So what I've done by making sure my door fits perfectly is to create another point of reference. Yes, it's adjustable, but if I really lock it in, then I know I can use it as a guide. If I line up my quarter gap to the door gap, hey, we know we're going to be super stinking close. So that's my plan on this. That's a whole lot of work. That's another episode. So I just want to say thank you guys for following along with this build. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for making the comments. Your comments make these episodes better. YouTube is a blast. Thank you for following me along. Please, if you want to up your skills, check out the Paintucation.com website. Check out some of my friends that have stopped in here, Kiwi Classics and Customs, Derek Berry, Vice Grip Garage. There's lots of great information on YouTube. So I hope you're having as much fun as I am with this stuff. We'll see you on the next episode.